My name is Harold. I'm 80 years old. And the most expensive mistake I ever made didn't cost me a single dollar. It cost me 30 years. And I made it every morning when I woke up, got dressed, and decided once again that my body could wait. I was 47 years old the first time my doctor looked me in the eye and told me my blood pressure was dangerously high. I remember the exact day. It was a Tuesday in October, and I had a meeting at 2 o'clock that I was already running late for. So I nodded, took the little pamphlet he handed me, and walked out of that office thinking I'd deal with it over the weekend. I never dealt with it over the weekend. The pamphlet ended up in the glove compartment of a car I traded in 3 years later, and that was about as much attention as I gave my own body for the next 3 decades. I was an engineer, bridges mostly, the kind that cross rivers in states most people only drive through. I was good at my job, and I knew it, and for a long time that felt like enough. My whole life had a structure that made sense to me. You showed up, you worked hard, you solved the problem in front of you, and at the end of the day you went home knowing you'd earned your place. I believed in that. I still do, in a way. But what I didn't understand then, what I couldn't see, was that I had quietly decided my body was not a problem that needed solving. My body was just the thing that carried me from one project to the next. My wife, Carol, used to say, I treated myself like a rental car. She wasn't wrong. I ate whatever was close. I slept as little as I could get away with. I hadn't run a mile since my 30s, hadn't lifted anything heavier than a briefcase in years. And every time she suggested we take a walk after dinner or try that new gym on Route 9, I had a reason why tonight wasn't a good night. There was always a deadline. There was always something more urgent. And here is the thing about urgency. It is an incredibly convincing liar. It will tell you every single day that the important things can wait. And it will keep telling you that until the day you discover they can't. I had my first real warning at 53, a mild cardiac event. That's what they called it, a mild cardiac event, which is a very calm phrase for the experience of sitting at your desk on a Wednesday afternoon and feeling the left side of your body go numb. I was in the hospital for 4 days. They adjusted my medications, gave me a diet plan, referred me to a cardiologist I saw twice before I stopped scheduling the follow-up appointments. Within a year, I was more or less back to the same habits, busier if anything, because I'd fallen behind while I was recovering. I am not telling you this because I want your sympathy. I'm telling you this because I know exactly what you're thinking right now. You're thinking that you're different, that you're aware of it, which somehow means you're managing it, that your situation is more complicated. Your schedule is genuinely impossible, and that when things settle down after the project, after the kids are older, after the holidays, you'll make the changes you know you need to make. I thought every single one of those thoughts, word for word, for 30 years. I retired at 67. Carol and I had talked about it for so long, planned it so carefully. The travel, the grandchildren, the slow mornings we hadn't had since before the kids were born. I walked out of my last day of work feeling something I can only describe as relief so deep it almost felt like grief. And for about 3 months, everything was exactly what we'd imagined. We went to Portugal. We drove up the coast of Maine. I read books I'd been meaning to read since the 1990s. Then the diagnoses started coming in, like bills after a vacation. Type 2 diabetes, which had apparently been developing quietly for the better part of a decade. Significant arthritis in both knees, which explained the pain I'd been ignoring and calling normal aging. And then, in the spring of my first year of retirement, a more serious conversation with my cardiologist about what 30 years of unmanaged blood pressure had done to the walls of my heart. He used the word damage. He said it carefully and kindly, the way doctors do when they're trying not to frighten you. But the words still sat in the room like something heavy had been dropped. I drove home from that appointment very slowly. Carol was in the garden when I pulled in, and she looked up and knew immediately from my face that something had shifted. We sat on the back steps for a long time without saying much. And at some point she took my hand, and I thought about all the walks I hadn't taken, and all the weekends I hadn't dealt with it, and all the little pamphlets I'd left in glove compartments. And I felt something that wasn't quite regret and wasn't quite grief, but was somewhere between the two. The specific sadness of understanding too late what something actually cost you. I want to be careful here because I don't want to make this sound more dramatic than it is. I am still here. I am 80 years old. I am sitting in the chair in a house I love, and there is a good life around me. But I live inside a body that is working harder than it should have to, that carries the accumulated weight of 30 years of decisions I made without fully understanding I was making them. Every morning when I get up, I feel the cost of that in ways that are difficult to describe to someone who hasn't felt it yet. And the hardest part, the part that stays with me, is knowing that so much of it didn't have to be this way. Not all of it, maybe, but so much of it. What I want to say to you, and I mean this whether you're 35 or 55 or 70, is that your body is not a problem you can defer. It is not a project you can pick back up when your schedule clears. It is the only project that was ever actually yours, and it is running on a timeline that does not care about your deadlines. The checkup you're putting off, the blood pressure you haven't checked, the weight you've been meaning to address since last January. Those things don't wait patiently. They develop quietly, and they compound slowly, and they present the bill at the exact moment in your life when you were finally ready to enjoy what you'd worked for. I'm not asking you to become someone you're not. I'm not asking you to run marathons or change everything overnight. I'm asking you to make the appointment you've been avoiding. I'm asking you to take the walk your spouse has been suggesting. I'm asking you to sit with your own doctor and actually listen the way I didn't listen on that Tuesday in October with the 2 o'clock meeting I was already late for. Because I promise you, the meeting can wait. The meeting was never the thing that mattered.